Okay, so here we are today with another episode of our Women in Electronics Now We United podcast. Super excited today. If you can see on my background, I am here at the Technical Solutions Center live at RS. So today I'm here with Karen Gavenda and Melissa Byshinsky. So I'm here with two leaders here at RS, and I'm super happy and super honored to be talking to live. So I'm going to start first with letting you introduce yourselves because both of you have great backgrounds, you have experience, and we want to hear about that, but we also want to hear how did you get here in this industry? So I'm going to turn it over. Maybe I'll start with you, Karen, just to introduce us to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Jackie, and thanks for making the trip to come visit us. I have been with RS for just over 3 years now. I can't believe it because it's gone by so fast. And we've gone through lots and lots of change in the last couple of years, from changing our brand to a whole new focus on services and solutions. And during that change, I've also changed roles. So I started here as director of marketing. And then I pivoted into the role I'm in now, which is Director of Strategic Programs, where I'm focusing on some of our customer experience projects that we have going on here. And prior to joining RS, I was actually with one of RS's suppliers, TE Connectivity, for about 5 years in a digital sales and marketing role. And prior to that, I was in different industries, including insurance and retail. So pretty varied background.
So Melissa, let's hear from you.
Sure. So I have been at RS for 2 years now. It was actually my 2-year birthday last week.
Okay.
I came into this industry early 2000s, starting at Newark Electronics. Worked there for almost 2 decades. Started out from the ground up, started inside sales, worked my way up there. When I left there, I was a general sales manager leading the North Central region. I did step out for a few years before coming to RS. I'm going to a power quality company at MTE, where I was their global director of sales. I came into this industry by happenstance, applied for a job on monster.com, received a call within like 30 minutes of applying, said to myself, okay, let's go check this out. I was a project coordinator at an architectural sign company. When I started in this industry, I literally thought it was a stepping stone. I was getting my bachelor's degree. I was pre-law. I had my heart set on being a lawyer. But somewhere in my second role on-site at a medical device company in southeastern Wisconsin, this industry became a huge part of who I am.
So from lawyer to electronics, that's really interesting. Just real quick before I get into a question I have for you, do you feel that those skills transferred, like you were studying in law? How are you applying that now to what you do?
Definitely the negotiation skills.
Okay.
Probably the most glaring. I mean, I didn't end up going far into pre-law because I had declared business with pre-law. I ended up finishing my bachelor's degree while working at Newark. I dropped the pre-law and just focused on business and leadership.
Well, that's really interesting. And it's important for people to note too, transferable skills, right? So knowing that there's always room to move around and yes, that we have the ability to transfer our skills. So, okay, let's start with this because here we are today. I was so honored and excited today. I'm here at your facility in Texas and was able to do a session, or Traits of a Modern Leader with your people here in the facility for Women in Electronics. And it was super fun, super engaging. We had a lot of people participating in person and also virtual. So super exciting. So here we are talking about Women in Electronics with you. Why is it that you both are involved with this initiative? What is the value? What are we doing this for together? And I will just start with you, maybe Karen.
Yeah, sure. So really excited to be part both of Women in Electronics and RS's employee resource group, Elevate. And really, I think RS is pretty progressive when it comes to supporting women. We've got a lot of programs and things going on there. We've got lots of flexibility when it comes to not only our job roles, but our schedules and where and how we work. I'm remote full time, so that's something that, several years ago hadn't been done before, right? So I really like being part of both organizations just because I think we need these support groups for women, and also for the men that we work with to understand some of the issues we're facing and how we can make it a better place to work for everybody. So I think it's been pretty valuable to be involved in both what RS as a company is doing and Women in Electronics, and then the partnership together has been really fantastic.
It's been fantastic, and so appreciate both of your help and support. So Melissa, what do you think about that? As far as why are we doing this together with Women in Electronics, RS, your women's group? What value do you see? And, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, just as I was starting to think about stepping out of the industry, I was hearing so much about the Women in Electronics, and I was hearing about the annual conference and how the organization focused on lifting each other up and networking throughout the industry. I think we're in this together because, first of all, we do perceive and think about things differently as women. And it's always nice to have those other women colleagues and network lifting each other up. But most importantly, I just think we've come a long way in this industry since I started a couple decades ago. But just the continual progression of being supportive to one another, being there for one another, and just continuing to showcase the people who make it where they want to be is super important.
But I wanted to, comment on that because really, when we were just doing this presentation, we really see the financial case for women rising into leadership roles. And part of that is the huge financial case that relative returns go up drastically, like 19% if we have women at the leadership table. And we just really do think of things differently. So as we're moving forward with Women in Electronics, we're actually moving forward as We United, where we want men and women to talk through these issues for systemic change. And what an exciting time for us to be able to all of us do this together and for us to benefit together from a program like this as well. So anyway, appreciate you both and, for giving us the opportunity. But to pause there, what is the importance or significance of women actually supporting other women? And what is it that you think either you're doing as a leader to support that, or your organization, your women's group here is doing to support that? Let's pause there because that's such a significant point of what we're doing. And the first step, when we first started We United, it was women supporting each other, women, then uniting with the men and uniting our channel. So if we go to that first step, what do you think about that? And how are you implementing that yourself as a leader? So Karen.
All right. Well, the most prominent thing that comes to mind for me is some of the mentorship arrangements that I've been involved in. And I started my career as a mentee, right? Looking to find those role models, to find someone who had been there before me that I could look up to and seek advice from. And now, as I've progressed in my career, now I've gotten the chance, both through some programs at RS and Women in Electronics, to actually become a mentor. And that has been just as valuable, if not more valuable, than being a mentee. And that to me has been really eye-opening in a couple ways. I've found value in a couple different types of mentoring relationships. So if you have a mentor-mentee relationship within your current company, sometimes it's pretty easy to relate to exactly what's going on, and for your mentor or mentee to understand exactly some of the people you're dealing with and situations you're dealing with because you're at the same company. And then at the same time, I've had others where I'm paired with someone outside of the company, and that's good in a different way because you get to perhaps, reveal a little bit more, be a little bit more personal, and you aren't at risk of that person knowing some of the people that you're maybe talking about or discussing. So I've found both sides, mentor, mentee, and then within the company and without, both really positive. And so something like Women in Electronics allows you to connect with people outside of your own company. So those are the ways that I'm really trying now to give back when it comes to leadership and supporting other women. And like I said, I say giving back, but I'm getting just as much from it now on the mentor side. So been really valuable for me all the way around.
It's a really good point because it's proven that mentorship is just a major part of career development or career advancement for women. It's such a critical component. So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Melissa?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Karen said. I mean, most of it has been around mentorship, mentee, mentor, mentee on both sides. Just on more of a personal perspective, what I do is just when I see someone struggling or I see someone second guessing themselves or I see them, as females, we tend to be a really good read of people. So you can kind of judge emotions. If I see something, I'll reach out to that person proactively and say, is there something I can help you with? Is there something you want to talk about, male or female? But I tend to get a better read of when a female is going through something that maybe they are uncomfortable sharing, and I'll work to pull it out of them a little bit.
I really like that a lot. So the support and also I would say this is a main point we made today too, is the validation. So we have to acknowledge that sometimes we do have different leadership issues or obstacles or challenges as women leaders, and the validation that comes with women supporting other women and having someone to go to, whether it's life balance issues or whatever it might be, really important as a source of validation too, to have the support of other female leaders and to someone to aspire to. So I wanted to also talk to you about, okay, so we have 3 program pillars: our leadership development, our mentorship, and our community, right? And we've all agreed that these are really essential parts, areas that can help us really elevate and develop in our careers. So how do you gain your knowledge? I mean, there's so much to do. We're all time challenged. It's really hard. Work is just a lot of work to do every day. How do you make the time? How do you develop? What do you utilize specifically to advance? So I'll start with you, Melissa.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, to your point, there's a lot out there. I mean, obviously, I read books, I look at LinkedIn courses. I recently retook my Clifton Strengths just to kind of see where it was from the past and where it looks now. I took advantage, just going way back, I took advantage, as I mentioned in the beginning, of using those employee sponsored educational reimbursement programs, got my bachelor's degree, used my master's degree, or also got my master's degree. But, I really like leadership courses. We've all taken many. The most recent one I went to was the Women in Electronics Summit in September. That was probably the most recent one that I've been involved with. But so much of my insightful learning, I will tell you, is just from networking the industry, developing those one-on-one relationships, finding people who somehow believed in me before I believed in myself, and really helped me define my career and reach for the stars on things that I never thought I was capable of.
Well, you mentioned networking. I think that's an area women undervalue the most and take off their plates the most. Networking is one of the number one forms of advancement because it's those people you network with that help you get you different places. And so the community part of what we're talking about is so essential because a lot of people don't really have the opportunities as much to get into these situations. So coming into a community where you can really network, so critical. So thank you for mentioning that with the networking. And Karen, what do you think about that? How do you mentioned mentorship before. So how do you continue to develop and continue to elevate yourself?
Yeah, I'll echo some of what Melissa said. I got to go to the WE conferences. I got to go twice, once when I was at TE and once when I was at RS. And that was, really valuable. Not just the topics that we, learn about during the day sessions, but all of the events, the networking. And I think we have to remember that sometimes as women, we like to keep our heads down and do the hard work and think that maybe networking is like maybe not a good use of time, or it's something that we don't maybe feel comfortable doing. But when it comes down to it, the businesses are run by people, and you have to know the right people, especially in today's competitive environment. So when you've got job postings out there that are now open to people worldwide, you're competing with not just your local workforce anymore, right? You're competing with really almost the entire world. So knowing people, and especially as you move up in your career, you get out of those entry-level roles and the roles become more and more specialized, and more people focused and people oriented, and have to deal with running a team. Who is really just as important as the experience you have. So I think the networking really is key. It's not something that everybody's always comfortable with. You have to kind of make yourself get comfortable with it, because the world, like I said, the world and businesses really do run from people, by people, with people. So the other things, like Melissa said, there is a lot out there. There's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of different training courses and things that want to take your money, of course. So you got to be picky and choosy with your time. I got actually to complete a really good training program that RS set up between us and a local university, and the reason it was so valuable is number one, we all went as sort of classmates together, so it was just limited to RS employees, and then they coordinated really well with our leadership. And we actually got to work on real work problems that we were facing at work. So that was super meaningful, and got a lot of us at the director level to sort of connect with each other, sort of outside of work. So all the way around, you have to look, I think, for the right programs that are really going to be meaningful, and decide where you want to spend your time, for sure.
Agree. I was going to ask you, backtrack on something. There's this reimbursement program you have, educational reimbursement or something. Maybe I just want to throw that out there, because I think you both employee reimbursement for education or something. I don't know what that is, but if you can describe that, because I think you both have benefited from that here at RS. Is there what is that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
So RS, like some employers offer reimbursement for additional education that you want to pursue on your own. And here at RS, it's actually pretty open, not just to bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, but for example, I'm in a project management professional certification course right now, trying to get my PMP, and that's something that RS is going to reimburse me for, the training and the exam and that sort of thing. So it's an annual benefit, part of our corporate benefits package that all employees have access to.
Melissa, have you benefited from that program too?
I have, at a different company. So I used it to get my master's and my bachelor's degree. And I think at that time, and I don't know exactly the what it is here, but it was a maximum of like $5,200 a year reimbursement towards your program each semester, each year, something along those lines. But yeah, definitely helped in getting those master's and bachelor's degree.
So I would just have to throw this out there, because I think it's pretty amazing that companies do this. And I think we do get so busy in the everyday busy. Take advantage of these programs. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then also, if I even look at, we were just talking today about the company invests in these memberships. And the number one thing we hear from people all the time is they're so busy, they're so busy, they're so busy. And I was just having a conversation with somebody just today about pulling ourselves out of that busy and looking at the strategy part. That busy work you're doing, is it ultimately getting you where you're trying to go? Is the busy matching the direction you're going? So we have to be very mindful, like you were saying before, Karen. How are we spending our time? Are we really doing all the things necessary that we should be doing? Because just being busy is sometimes just puts you on a rat wheel. So anyway, I just had to throw that out there because I thought that was interesting as well. So let's get into some mentorship conversations, because I think we did want to talk quite a bit about mentorship, because it's such an essential part of not only what we do, but how women can advance and bringing a light to this, and so people can develop that. So just expanding on being a mentor, what piece of advice would each of you have from a mentorship perspective? So I don't know, maybe I'll just start with you, Melissa, on this one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is a huge piece of advice, and it goes back to something we talked about a little bit earlier with my career and my career aspirations and where I went versus where I thought I was going to go, is adaptability. Adaptability is critical. As far as having mentors, those are people in your corner. Those are people you can have those open and honest and transparent conversations with. They can give you advice. They give you the constructive criticism as well as the positive feedback. And to me, it's just really important to be able to have those people in your corner and get that advice, get that constructive criticism. It's a safe space. They can help you with your goals, your barriers, and big ideas in an unbiased way.
Yes, and really, I just have to ask you too, though, so with you having mentors, so obviously you are now in a position to mentor and offer advice to others. Who's a mentor that has maybe mentored you, and what is a learning lesson you have taken from a mentor?
Yeah, so I can tell you, if you look back at my younger self, I wouldn't be where I am today without mentors. I haven't gone through formal mentorship programs, but I've been very fortunate that organically I have had 3 people come into my life that just became my mentors. I consistently credit them with where I am today because they pushed me. They saw something in me I didn't see in myself. They pushed me to go for things I would have never saw myself going for. In fact, one of them I credit with, he gave me my first big girl job, I call it, as I moved up the chain. So super important. And while I have 3 critical mentors, I mean, I have a situation where I did run into a happenstance mentor as I was sitting in a Sky Club, Adult Sky Lounge, where I was having a difficult conversation with somebody on the phone, a leader of mine. And, I quickly scanned the small Sky Club going, where can I go in a corner that nobody will hear me? Because I knew this wasn't going to go well. And it never did. So I went to a corner where there was this couple and I thought, they're not going to pay any attention to me. So I got on the phone, I sat on the phone, I had the conversation. It went the way I thought it would. Kind of hung up that call and sat there trying to catch my breath. And this sweet woman leaned forward and she patted me on the knee and she said, I'm sorry, I couldn't help listen to your conversation. And her husband piped up and said, oh, I'm sorry, she can't help herself. And I'm on the verge of tears. And so, we kind of broke the ice and we started to laugh. And she said, honey, I have been the CEO of many, many companies. And she said, I don't know who was on the other end of that line, but she said, never, ever let anybody treat you that way. And it turned into us talking. It turned into she was on the plane in front of me and switched seats. And we talked the whole 4-hour flight home. She was retired, but she was consulting. Her husband was the vice president of a large global technology, vice president of engineering of a large global technology company. We just talked. We built a relationship. And, we connected on LinkedIn. She told me that her consulting fees were over $2,000 an hour. So I couldn't afford her. So I had to get my mentorship in that short burst of period. But you know what? While I always will believe in the 3 people who saw something in me, this woman gave me more in that probably 5 hours than I knew than I knew existed. Like, she just became somebody I looked up to. We kept in contact in LinkedIn for a while. It was just little chats back and forth, but oh man, did that woman in that happenstance mentorship I call make so many changes in my life. She gave me a clear vision on what I needed to do in the situation I was in.
So it's also an example people being human beings and reaching out to other people. I was just telling somebody this morning, it's amazing to me when I go out in public now how addicted to phones people are, that people are not paying attention to other people. So I really love that she paid attention. You're in a sky lounge. She heard you and paid attention. I love that. We have to start remembering, right, to be there for others. So that is such a good example of mentorship that you got just on the fly. We can all try to do that for each other. Melissa, what examples do you have in your mentorship? Either, your mentorship advice, but also what are some things you've learned from your mentors?
I think you meant me. So yeah, a couple things. I'll kind of go the other way. One, I won't say was a mentor. I'll say was just sort of a superior. Wasn't my direct manager, but someone that I sort of worked with tangentially. And they actually gave me some what I thought was pretty bad advice. And so I've kind of gone on the opposite of that going forward. At one point, this person said to me, you really need to pick an area. You need to become an expert in one area and go really deep. And that's really how you're going to become successful. Become an expert in one area. And I just thought at the time that just didn't fit well with me because, I had majored in IT undergrad. I had an MBA in finance. I had worked in operations and sales support and IT and marketing. And I thought that's not me. I want to be a well-rounded person because no matter what kind of role you're going to be in, you're going to need to be able to, speak the dollars on the finance side. And it's probably going to involve technology, right, on the technical side. So I thought that was bad advice. And sure enough, the technology that he was an expert in is now since pretty much outdated. So that didn't work out too well. And so that's what I try to tell some of my mentees is that it seems like the people that thrive the most are the ones who can really, like Melissa said, sort of be adaptable. The world keeps changing. I think it's funny too when people say, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? And somebody has, an exact title that they want. For all we know, a lot of the jobs that are going to exist in 5 years, we don't even know about yet. So I think it's really the people who can adapt and change, whether that means to different technology, situations, ways of working, are really the ones that are going to be the most successful. And so that's what I really try to tell my mentees as well. You don't have to pick just one area. You don't have to be an expert in just one thing. You should really strive to be well-rounded because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So that's really, I kind of took some bad advice and turned it around.
I think that is such a good comment because we were just saying it earlier too, that everything's changing so much. And when you think about it before, it used to be like if you were in marketing, you were just in marketing, or you were in IT,
Yep.
and everything was so divided. Everything's just coming together now, right? Like it doesn't matter what department you are, you have to cross learn, you have to cross train, you have to know a lot about a lot of things. So staying curious, staying adaptable, also those critical thinking skills. People think about all the technology we have. Critical thinking skills are going to be the most essential moving forward. So we will need those more and more as we implement more AI tools and advanced technology tools. So really good comments. So I wanted to ask you too, as you look at our industry, and here we're talking about mentorship, and here we're Women's History Month. So we're focusing this episode on mentorship and how we can support other women in our industry rising up. And that is the whole premise of this conversation today. But what role of mentorship do you see really impacts right here, right now in our industry? What is this role of mentorship right here, right now? Why are we taking the time to talk about this so much? So I'll start with you, Melissa.
Yeah, I mean, mentorship is a critical in any career path. Like I said, you always have to have that advocate who's transparent with you. But our industry is so complex. It's so fast paced. It can be daunting when you first come in this industry. I mean, I think about I joke about, I went through my binder training where I learned what an amp was. I learned what a volt was. And then I had a binder to make those outbound sales calls. And you went in a private room so nobody could hear you because you were all in these like sales offices with low cubicles that you could hear and see everything. My first call was like, I need an 18 gauge stranded wire. And you're flipping through this big catalog, or, panic sets in. And then the next call is, I need a circular connector with, and you're flipping through the catalog and panic sets in. So I think back to that, and, it's just a daunting, fast paced, complex industry. And I go back to what I said earlier, that, for me, mentorship in this industry really supports the networking, because the networking helps you learn. It helps you understand that, you may start having to know parts, and you may start having to know a little more like how the part works. But then the mentorship in this industry really helps you learn how to package up your company for solutions, or how to engage with this department to make your company easy to do business with or stand out. So, I really just believe it is really around networking to bring the right people. Karen mentioned, you were in different departments. Back when I started, it was a very siloed industry. I think that's been broken down dramatically. When I first started, it was like you couldn't call product management. And now, I was having full conversations on a regular basis with our CEO in some roles, so it's about that networking piece. It's about learning to manage this industry, because it is so, I keep saying it, but it is so complex. And what I love is I find myself really leaning into people who are new into this industry, maybe fresh out of college, because it's not the industry people. People are thinking software, they're thinking all this, all this different stuff, and they maybe don't realize that our industry is that dynamic. So I find myself naturally leaning into those people, trying to bring them along into our industry, because there is so much opportunity. There is so much excitement. There is always learning, always change. It's never a dull moment. And that's where I think the networking piece through mentorship can help as well.
I really like that, because I also like the concept of reverse mentorship, because we have to take all the fresh ideas from our youth coming in and learn from them too. All the marketing, all the new technology, just so much they can bring us. So when we look at mentorship, it should also be, what are we learning from our youth and what are they gaining from us as well? It should be that back and forth. But it's amazing. These interviews go by so fast. I mean, we are literally almost out of time, and I feel like I've barely just started. But I do want to throw something out to you, and I don't mean to hit you off guard, but I do want to ask you both this. I think a way of helping people sometimes is also to help them avoid certain mistakes. Where have you seen people derail their careers the most? So I'll start with you, Melissa. I'm sorry I didn't give you any prep time to talk about this, but I'm so curious what you would think about this, because we always talk about what we should do to advance, but what are some pitfalls to avoid? What would you say, Melissa?
The stigmas. There's been some situations. I was that person who always believed there was no glass ceilings. When my friends would tell me there was a glass ceiling, I had a saying: go be you and break through. Be your authentic self. Keep fighting. I did. I mean, I had 6 different roles at one company, and I fought hard for every one of those roles. I was rejected. I compare it to the music industry, right? You're told no a million times, but you keep fighting. Don't let the no's derail your career. Don't put yourself in a box based on where you thought you were going to go. But don't let if you've had those, I've seen the derailment come when they have those experiences of what women can feel in any industry. It's not just our industry, but where you hear about these things. And I go, like I said, I never believed it happened until it happened to me. And then it happened to me, and I started to let it derail my career. And I lost all my confidence. I wanted to go backwards. I wanted something that wasn't challenging. Like, I went through a period of severe self-doubt. So don't let that. Keep fighting, keep swimming, persevere through it.
That is such a good point, and I'm so happy you made that. Two critical things. One, you didn't really acknowledge that there was a glass ceiling until you hit it. So many people are in this situation. When we look at our national data, only 8% of women are in leadership roles in our country, in the United States as a whole, in C-suite roles. And then in our industry, it matches. There is such a thing going on. And I believe that men and women together, everybody equally does want to change this. We were all brought into the system, but what you're saying is so validating because so many people experience this, and I appreciate that you brought that up very much. And keep swimming, keep going. Love that, because people do get discouraged. So Karen, what would you say? Where do you see that people derail their careers the most?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think, a lot of people put a lot of focus on knowing exactly what you want, but I think there's also value in knowing what you don't want, what you aren't good at, what you aren't passionate about. Because early on in your career, you're going to get pressured to say yes, right, to a lot of opportunities, and probably almost anything that comes your way. You're going to feel pressure to say yes to, and you probably should early in your career, right? But as you move on in your career, your gut will tell you whether something is or isn't right for you. And it happened to me once, sort of mid-career. I was with a company I really liked. I had been with that company and moved around for almost 10 years, and was finally in the last position, second to last position I was in. I really liked it. And then I got tapped from a higher level person at the organization to come take on a different role. I didn't want it. I knew I didn't want it. I knew in my gut it wasn't something that I wanted, but because of this person's stature there at the company, I didn't feel like I could say no. And I ended up saying yes against my better judgment. I was unhappy, stressed, and exhausted. And after 6 months, I left the company that I had been happy at for 10 years. So now I really try to make it a point with my current leadership about things that I am and am not willing to do or to take on, things that do or don't interest me, not just to make somebody else happy, but because it doesn't do anybody any good, either yourself or the company you work for, right? To take on something where you won't be happy and might end up leaving anyway. So it's tough. It's really tough to say no, but it is worse to say yes and do something that you're not passionate about, because that doesn't end up well for anybody. So really try and figure out what you don't want and stick to that as well.
That is such a good point, and I appreciate that. Again, we were talking today about passion and really taking your natural superpowers. You mentioned the gut, the instinct. We have to know as women that is a real thing, and that will guide us. That woman's intuition is a real powerful thing. In fact, it's one of our superpowers. We really need to acknowledge that. We really need to let that be a guide for us. It's a real thing. And so I really appreciate that you said that too, because, keeping us in the direction where our passions lie is also really important. And we are so out of time, but I just have to throw this out there. I'm in the studio, so I'm getting looks like, okay, we got to wrap it up. But I just want one more. I promise, one more question. I just want to throw this out there because I believe we're having a human conversation, right? And we're bringing the empathy, the natural traits we bring as leaders is just to communicate and talk about things. So I want to ask you both, what is it as a human being that makes you the happiest and saddest? Like if you could just think of you as a human and, what is it that makes you feel joy in your soul, or what makes you feel like, oh my gosh, you could cry? And this is just the human part of the conversation. So Karen, what do you say?
I'll say just in general, and this goes for both best and worst, makes me the happiest when things are flowing and people are getting along. And at the same time, the worst is when there's conflict. So for me, I'm really I struggle when there's conflict. It makes me uncomfortable, and I just want everybody to get along, right? And so I'm happiest when teams are working together, working well, everything's flowing. That is not always normally the case, right? But I'm happiest when other people are happy and getting along. And it, like I said, bothers me when there is conflict. And the bad part about that is there is almost always going to be some kind of conflict going on. So have to learn how to deal with it, right? But like to try and avoid it or encourage working together without conflict as much as possible. So that's just off the top of my head.
Melissa?
Yeah, I love it. A little bit along Karen's line. I love it when teams gel. You're making a huge impact. You can feel the difference you're making in the organization, whether you're just chugging along, whether you're going through business transformation. It just makes me happy because we're all in this together. Nobody can do this alone. What makes me the saddest is definitely, and it comes back from some things that happened in youth when, maybe the 80s, 90s, whenever I was a youth, maybe it was a little bit more, trying to think of the right phrase, women or girls not lifting each other up,
Yes.
stabbing each other in the back, judging each other, one person, judging another person for this. It makes me sad that as women, we constantly judge each other. We constantly judge ourselves. And it's hard. It can be really hard. So it makes me sad.
Well, that's a really good point and really good for everyone listening to know that we all need each other. And let's work together to lift each other up. Let's work alongside our male colleagues. And I just have to say, one of the things that brings me the most joy is days like today, where I get to be here live at RS. And we had just an amazing session. And somebody came on at the last minute who was actually from Mexico. And she had gotten some validation on some things. And she said a heartfelt comment that really made me feel validated that some of the hard work we do, if it just reaches that one person, sometimes it's all worth it, right? Because that one person really matters. So appreciate you both being here, sharing your thoughts with us. We had so much to talk about today. I feel like it went so fast. Is there any final thoughts? Is there anything you wanted to say before we conclude the interview?
Jackie, I'll just say thanks again for making the trip, and thanks for all the support you've been giving to RS and everything you're doing to advocate and sometimes say the things that some of us are afraid to say or are afraid to bring up, and you remind us to keep going and keep pushing. So appreciate that.
Yeah, and I would echo and just say thanks for all you do, Jackie. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to becoming more and more involved in women in electronics.
Great. Well, we appreciate you very much. Appreciate the whole team behind we and RS and the group and all of us working together. It's just been a really positive experience. So those of you listening, thank you for tuning in. You can download our podcast, We United, anywhere you get your podcasts, and go to womenInElectronics.com to learn more. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Thanks so much.
You.